Women have always been taught to be the heartbeat of connection, to listen, to hold, to mend. But somewhere in the quiet spaces between giving and being ignored, something begins to change. There comes a moment, subtle, almost invisible, when her voice softens not from peace, but from fatigue. When her laughter becomes measured, when she no longer argues, not because she agrees, but because she knows it won't matter. You see it in the smallest moments. She is sitting beside the man she once shared everything with, the air between them filled with the ghosts of old conversations. He's talking, but she's far away. Her gaze is still, her body present, her heart absent, and in that silence there's a heaviness words can't carry. Her silence isn't cold, it's tired. It's the sound of every unacknowledged feeling folding into itself. The sound of a woman realizing that her voice, no matter how soft or strong, no longer reaches the place it once did. So, she stops trying. She withdraws, not out of anger but self-protection, because emotional withdrawal isn't distance. It's a kind of quiet rebellion, a woman's way of saying, I can't keep breaking myself to be understood. And maybe you, VE, felt that too, that moment when you sense your spirit slowly closing its doors. When you start to detach, not because you don't care, but because you've cared too deeply for too long. But here's the paradox. While the world sees your silence as coldness, it's actually the most honest cry your soul can make. You're not shutting down, you're surviving. Your silence is the boundary your heart builds when it's run out of language for pain. And yet, underneath that quiet, there's still movement, still emotion, still the longing to be seen, because silence isn't the absence of feeling it, as the presence of everything you were never allowed to express. So the question isn't why women withdraw, it's what happens inside when they do. What shifts in the heart of a woman who has given, loved, and hoped until her spirit starts to whisper, enough. That's where the truth begins, in the space between love and survival, between expression and silence, and that's where we go next. It happens quietly, not with a fight, not with a scream, but with a silence that feels heavier than any argument could ever hold. Women know this moment well. It's the night when something inside you changes, though you can't explain what or why. You're sitting there, maybe in the passenger seat, maybe on the edge of a bed, maybe across a dinner table, listening to someone try to fix what they broke with logic instead of love. He's saying the right words, but they land hollow, like echoes in a room where warmth no longer lives. Your hands are folded in your lap. You nod, but your heart is elsewhere, somewhere safer, somewhere quieter. He's frustrated that you're not responding. You frustrated that he doesn't understand that you've already responded 1,000 times before. Every conversation, every tear, every attempt to be seen was you reaching out, and every time you were met with dismissal, another part of you dimmed. That's the night you go quiet, not because you've stopped caring, but because you can't keep bleeding to prove you're alive. You realize that explaining yourself has become a form of self-betrayal, and the silence that follows isn't a choice. It's a surrender. Women don't wake up one day and decide to stop talking. It's slower than that, a quiet erosion. It begins with soft compromises, with holding your tongue to keep the peace. It deepens when your pain is minimized, when your emotions are labeled as too much. You start to measure your words, your tone, your timing, and in doing so, you begin to disappear. You fade not because you want to vanish, but because being fully present in a place that denies your truth is too painful to bear. And you've felt this before, haven't you? That tightening in your chest when your words start to feel useless. That ache in your throat when you want to speak, but you already know what the answer will be. So you stay quiet, not out of indifference, but out of exhaustion. You think, what's the point? And that question is where the silence begins. But here's what you might not realize. Your silence isn't emptiness. It's your nervous system trying to protect you. It's your body stepping in when your heart has carried too much for too long. It's your spirit whispering, you don't have to fight to be understood anymore. This is the moment most people misunderstand. They see the distance, but not the story behind it. They see your stillness, but not the battles it took to get there. They see a quiet woman, not a woman who fought for connection until it became unsafe to try. And so, that's where we go next, beneath the quiet. Because when a woman goes silent, it's not the end of her emotions, it's the beginning of herself. There is a moment every woman reaches, the moment when her mind begins to do what her heart no longer can. It's subtle, almost invisible, but deeply intelligent. The mind steps in like a quiet guardian, pulling the curtains closed on feelings that have become too heavy to bear. Women are natural connectors. You are built to nurture, to listen, to repair the cracks in love with gentleness and hope. Your empathy is your greatest power, but also the doorway through which pain can enter. When your heart gives endlessly and receives confusion in return, the brain begins to sense danger. Emotional unsafety doesn't always come from cruelty. Sometimes, it's the ache of being unseen, unheard, or misunderstood. And that's when your mind whispers, *enough. Let me take over, *. You see, emotional withdrawal isn't coldness, it's regulation. Your nervous system begins to conserve energy the way a body conserves warmth in a storm. It stops sending emotional signals to places that don't respond. It numbs what it cannot heal. It silences what it cannot express. And in doing so, it saves you even if it feels like you're losing yourself. You've probably felt that strange calm after too many emotional storms, that quiet, that isn't peace but protection. It's your subconscious building a boundary, one your conscious mind hasn't found the words for yet. It's not that you've stopped loving, it's that you can keep loving from a place that's draining your spirit. The withdrawal isn't rejection, it's self-rescue. But here, the hidden truth most women never see. Withdrawal isn't the end of love, it's the end of self-betrayal. It's the moment you stop abandoning your own emotional needs to preserve a connection that doesn't preserve you. The world may call it cold, but only you know how much warmth it took to finally turn quiet. You start to understand why you sometimes seem distant, why you stop chasing closeness that once felt so urgent. You're not becoming less emotional, you're becoming selective about where your energy flows. You're reclaiming control in the one place chaos used to live inside you. And yet, beneath that quiet strength, one question still lingers in your chest, soft but haunting. If emotional withdrawal is protection, what are you really protecting yourself from? That question leads us deeper into the hidden layers of pain, conditioning, and grief that most women carry in silence. And that's where the next truth begins to unfold. It never happens all at once. Women wake up one day and decide to withdraw. It's a slow unraveling, a quiet erosion of emotional safety that begins long before the silence. It's a pattern so subtle, so familiar, that most of us mistake it for love. It begins with overgiving. Women are taught that love means effort, that if something feels off, you fix it by giving more. So you try harder to be understood. You listen more, forgive faster, explain deeper. You pour out empathy, reassurance, patience, until you've emptied yourself to fill someone else. And when the connection still doesn't feel safe, you don't stop giving. You double it, because you believe that love can be earned through effort. But what no one tells you is that overgiving doesn't heal disconnection, it deepens it. You begin to lose yourself in the act of trying to be enough, and slowly, resentment replaces tenderness. Your heart still beats for him, but it no longer beats freely for you. Then comes the minimization pattern. It starts small. A sigh when you express your feelings, a comment like you're overreacting. The message lands quietly but cuts deep, that your emotions are too heavy, too dramatic, too inconvenient. So you start to shrink your emotional presence to make others comfortable. You talk softer, you cry privately, you tell yourself, maybe it's not that big of a deal. But inside, your truth keeps echoing, unheard. You internalize the lie that being emotional is being weak, and soon, silence becomes your safest language. Because at least in silence, no one can call you too much. And then, there's the hope trap, the most deceptive of all. You keep believing things will change, that if you just wait a little longer, love will return to what it once was. You hold on to potential, not reality. You interpret crumbs as signs of progress, and promises as proof. You stay emotionally available even when your energy is gone, because letting go of hope feels like failure. But each time that hope is unmet, another piece of your spirit grows numb, not because you stopped loving, but because you ran out of ways to survive the disappointment. These patterns don't break you all at once. They slowly dissolve you from the inside out. You begin to withdraw not out of coldness but self-preservation, because when connection becomes a battlefield, detachment becomes your armor. The world may see it as indifference, but only you know it's exhaustion, and that's the truth most overlook. Women don't emotionally withdraw to punish. They withdraw to survive, to protect the fragments of themselves still unbroken, to find oxygen where the air once suffocated them. But survival has its own price, doesn't it? Because even in that safety, something still aches beneath the quiet, and that's where the next truth begins, in the hidden pain that lives underneath your withdrawal. There's a truth hidden beneath every woman's silence, one that most people never see. Emotional withdrawal isn't coldness. It isn't indifference. It's grief. The kind of grief that doesn't come with tears or funerals, but with the quiet ache of being unseen for too long. When you pull away, you're not giving up on love. You're mourning it. You're grieving the death of emotional safety, the loss of that soft place where your heart once felt held. You're grieving the version of yourself who believed love could fix everything, who believed understanding was enough. Women carry a deep kind of sorrow when they go quiet, a mourning of what should have been simple: to speak and be heard, to feel and be met. But that silence isn't new. It began long before any relationship. It began in childhood, when little girls learned that peace was kept by self-control, when emotions were met with discomfort, not compassion. You learned to swallow your feelings, to apologize for your tears, to tone down your truth so others could stay comfortable. You were taught that being good meant being quiet, that your strength was in your ability to endure. So later in life, when love feels unsafe, your body remembers that old lesson. It remembers the tension of holding everything in. It remembers that safety is not in expression, but in retreat. So you begin to pull back, not because you want to, but because every cell in your body is whispering, we've been here before. Protect yourself. This isn't weakness, it's conditioning. It's the subconscious programming that told women to be emotional pillars for everyone but themselves. The world calls it strength when you hold it together, but labels it coldness when you finally stop. Yet your withdrawal isn't indifference. It's the body's final boundary, the moment your spirit decides it will no longer trade self-worth for connection. And maybe you've felt that before. That strange duality of silence and sadness living side by side inside you. You're not angry anymore, not even disappointed, just tired. That's the silent cry no one hears. The one that doesn't ask for attention, but for understanding, for rest. Because here's the truth. It's not that you stopped feeling. It's that you felt everything. Every word, every dismissal, every unmet need, and no one noticed. But now you do. You notice. You finally see that silence not as your weakness, but as the message your body has been trying to send all along. I've reached my limit. And once you understand that, you stop punishing yourself for needing distance. You begin to see withdrawal not as an ending but as the beginning of healing. And that's where we go next, from self-protection to self-restoration, from silence to the sound of your own strength returning. There comes a moment in every woman's journey when silence shifts. It no longer feels like hiding, it begins to feel like healing. After all the noise, after the exhaustion of explaining and defending and proving, there's a quiet that finally feels like truth. Women have been taught to fear their own withdrawal, to see it as distance, failure, or coldness. But in reality, that silence is often the first whisper of wisdom. It's the body saying, I can't keep pouring from this wound. The first step is to honor that silence. It's not weakness, it's your nervous system's way of protecting what's left of your emotional energy. You're not shutting people out. You're giving yourself the safety you were never given permission to need. Sometimes, The most loving thing you can do for yourself is to stop speaking in spaces that don't listen. And here as a truth many women learn the hard way. You don't owe endless explanations for your emotions. You've spent years trying to make people understand your heart, rehearsing your feelings in gentler tones, softer words, hoping they'd finally see your depth. But those who are unwilling to understand will never hear you clearly, no matter how calmly you speak. Stop performing emotional clarity for those who prefer confusion. You owe understanding to yourself, not constant justification to others. Then, slowly, you begin to rebuild, but not through others, through yourself, through solitude that doesn't feel lonely but restorative, through journaling that turns chaos into language, through therapy that teaches you to trace your triggers back to tenderness, through movement that lets your body release what words cannot. Healing isn't about reopening your heart too soon. It's about learning to trust your heart's rhythm again. Because the truth is, emotional reconnection doesn't start with another person, it starts with your own permission to feel again. When you stop fearing your emotions, they stop controlling you. You no longer need to withdraw from them, because they no longer feel like a threat. You begin to hold them, honor them, understand them, and in doing so, you return home to yourself. The same silence that once protected you can now become the space that restores you. It's no longer an escape, it's a sanctuary, and from this stillness something begins to rise. Not the woman you were before the pain, but the woman you became because of it. In the beginning, women often sit in silence, tired, confused, and questioning where their softness went. That quiet once felt heavy, almost like defeat, but now, it's different. Now, it feels sacred, because somewhere along the way, the silence that once swallowed you has become the space that rebuilt you. This is what happens when a woman rises from her emotional withdrawal. She doesn't return as who she was before, she returns as who she was always meant to be. No longer chasing peace from others, but cultivating it within herself. No longer performing love to be chosen, but radiating it from a place of choice. The woman who once sat in silence now sits alone, in peace. She's not avoiding, she's choosing. She's not numb, she's grounded. Her stillness no longer hides pain, it reveals power. Your silence was never your weakness. It was your body's way of leading you back home to yourself. You weren't breaking down, you were breaking open. Because when women withdraw, they don't disappear, they're reborn. You learn to hold your emotions without apologizing for their depth, to love without losing your boundaries, to rest without guilt. You start realizing that emotional withdrawal was never the end of love, it was the beginning of self-respect. The moment you stopped begging to be seen was the moment you started seeing yourself clearly. You stopped reaching for people who didn't reach back. You stopped explaining pain to those who benefited from your silence. You stopped confusing emotional effort with emotional worth. And that's when everything shifts. Because healing doesn't make you softer, it makes you steadier. It teaches you that your heart was never too much. It was just too pure for the wrong kind of understanding. You were never meant to shrink to be loved. You were meant to be understood, to be safe. And when you finally stop explaining your worth, you start embodying it. Now, that quiet inside you no longer feels like absence. It feels like arrival. And this peace, this power, this grounded knowing is the awakening you were always meant to reach.